Cameras are rolling, by the way, so.
Okay.
Tone it down.
That's the only way I can slow this conversation down.
It's going downhill in a hurry.
Oh, God, right into a pond, off a ledge.
Well, the sheep will keep you out of the pond.
Yeah, exactly. Mike, you got something to open the show with?
Yeah, we can talk about sunscreen.
Okay, we can talk about that. I got something real simple I'm going to talk about. We can't hear you, can't see you until I bring you back on the air, but you can hear and see us. And as far as like our volume and everything, you can hear us and see us okay on your end?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, Mike, give him a little sound check.
Hello, darling.
Hello.
All right, we're going to take you off the air there.
Yep.
He's got a nice shirt on today.
He does.
It's almost like a replication of the shirt.
Maybe I should have run a comb through my hair today.
You want a hat or something?
Man, I just brushed it back.
I got a cowboy hat in here somewhere.
Yeah. Actually, it's in the truck.
Bro. But your shirt looks like a identical one as far as his. Like you two could be twin brothers.
Well, we look almost like twins.
Yeah, okay. So here we go.
Right.
And now for something special. The unit is self-contained with its own saddler, farrier, wheelwright and so on. It's a rigorous training dished out who know all there is to know about horses, and it brings results.
We take you behind the scenes now to show just some of the interesting aspects of this training.
Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, the award-winning #1 podcast to create sounder horses from the ground up. Mike Stine is a registered journeyman farrier with an APF1 accreditation. On this week's episode, we're going to talk to Dr. Micheal Steward again, and what we're going to talk about is the biomechanics to properly trim a hoof, apply orthotic compensation, and also different times of rehabilitating a hoof. All this and much, much more will be discussed here on Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. And over to our far right-hand side is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Travis?
I'm doing all right. Well, I'm doing better now.
Good.
Because my back was a little bit out of line, and my wife got home, and she gave me a little bit of an adjustment, a little attitude adjustment before we got started here on the show. So I'm good, my back's good, and everything's going on. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing okay,
You said you weren't doing well the other day. Why do you have eye wash on the counter there?
Well, I've tested out some new sunscreen the other day.
What do you mean test it out?
Well, a new use for it, I guess.
Okay, what's the new use for it?
It's better than sunglasses than keep the sun out of your eyes, apparently.
Well, did you know that that you can get your eyes sunburned? Raised in Florida, born and raised in Orlando, Florida. Right. If you're not careful, your eyes physically can get sunburned. Now, so were you squirting the sunscreen right in your eyes?
Well, not intentional, but it kind of ended up there. And when you're out in the sun and you can't open your eyes because they're burning from the sunscreen, then your eyes are protected from the sun, right?
Exactly. That's
you can't open them so the sun doesn't bother them, right?
Right.
So it protected my eyes from the sun.
So you're good there, but the problem is you can't see what you're doing.
Well, yeah, exactly. That was a bit of an issue.
Was this the beginning of your day or the start or the end of your day?
About the middle of the day.
So everyone from lunchtime on,
they were kind of blurry.
Yeah.
You know?
So did you make it home all right?
No, I got home.
Oh, okay. Well, since last week's show, we were talking about laminitis and horses putting on weight and everything.
Right.
And my wife heard the show. So after that show, this actually, the past show we did this Friday, and we're doing one here on Monday, back on our regular schedule. My wife and I went down Saturday morning to feed the horses. She goes, you know what? We've got 2 full pastures here full of grass.
Right.
Normally we give Dominique and Cayenne 1 fleck of hay in the morning and then 2 flecks at night. She's like, I'm going to back off the hay a little bit.
Good.
In the morning. I said, okay, so is there anything I can help you with? She said, yes. Dominique is a rare breed where she uses the bathroom all in one place. And not like horses, they walk and plop and walk and plop and walk and plop.
Does she not walk? She just stands in one place and plops.
No, well, she will walk the whole entire pasture, but when she has to use the restroom, always goes to one location, right in this dead center of the pasture, uses the bathroom like that. This is my area. This is where I go to the bathroom, and then walks out and then eats all the grass all the way around it. Of course, horses don't eat where they poop. Like we shouldn't either, of course.
Well, you should.
No, but so I had, we've got all this nice lush grass about, 100 feet by 100 feet where she's been pooping over the last couple of months. So I took the Haro drag, with the tines and everything sticking down, and I dragged that field and let it sit. And we got a nice little rainstorm this morning and stuff. So that washes everything in. So now I've got nice lush grass that's going to start growing out there. So we figured we're going to back off the hay, and I trimmed some of the the big weeds down so they don't poke their eyes when they're going down to get the nutrients down below. So yeah, that's why I've been busy maintaining my pasture. Normally I would just let it go. I'm like, let a horse be a horse, let it eat where it wants to eat. But eventually that horse is going to run out of grass. And then,
some people with small pastures pick their pastures.
What do you mean pick their with a
like you do a stall?
No. Well, Mike, how long do you think it would take me just to do that front pasture out there?
Well, you need something to do. It's not like you're doing anything when you're not up here doing this show.
Right, exactly. When I'm sitting in this studio for 16 hours a day.
Right.
No, I have seen where they've got almost like a sled that travels around and picks up all the horse poop, and then they all put it in one pile and stuff. But yeah, so I just took the harrow and I just kind of break it up a little bit and let the rain go down. And then
I'd give you something to pick the pasture with, like maybe a salad fork. So,
You really don't like me, do you?
I wasn't going to come right out and say that.
But I have to put sunscreen in my eyes, and hopefully I won't get sunscreen in my eyes.
Well, that makes it more challenging.
Yes. All right, guys, stick around. When we come back, speaking of challenging, we're going to talk to Dr. Micheal Steward. He's going to get us update of what he's been doing. If you forget who he is or what he does, he had those wooden clogs out here. The past show he was on season 7, episode 2. So if you want to get a recap on that, jump back there on that podcast and listen to it, or the video as well. And for every podcast we do, we have a matching video over on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe over to Mike Stine over there, and you can see all the shenanigans that happens here in the studio with x-rays, pictures, videos, and all that stuff, and our special guests coming up next on Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back. Boop. Boop.
Should we do something?
I always do after the first break.
Right.
Yep. Mike, you okay? Michael, are you okay? I got Mike.
Yes, I'm okay.
I got Mike, and I got Michael.
And you got 3 mics.
I got 3 mics. Well,
that don't respond to you. 2 that try to.
I had been every 30 seconds yesterday. I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good for the show today. So I took a little medicine and some warm coffee. Not hot coffee, warm coffee.
Left over from your adventures.
Yeah, from being on the cruise. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. Brought to you by Equine.1. That's Equine 1 with their natural hoof dress. Oh, hold on. I got to switch screens here. Hold on. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. Brought to you by Equine 1, natural hoof mender, and also natural hoof dressing. Get 10% off your total order right now. Go to Equine.1 and type in the keyword podcast and get 10% off all your hoof care needs. And they got a couple new formulas coming out here. I think they said spring of next year they're working on a new formula for something else to add to this combination that they got going on. And if you want to see Mike Stine holding these right in front of his face, Mike, you got to put your face in. There you go. You got to put your face in between.
Get the psycho look going, right?
Exactly. Go over to Equine.1 for your order right now. And over to my far hand side is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Travis?
Doing all right. And joining us this week is Dr. Micheal Steward. How are you, doctor? And welcome back to the show.
I'm better than I ought to be. Thank you.
So what have you been up to? Now, refresh everyone who has not got caught up on the last season or season 7, episode 2, where the last time you're on, what you actually do and what's an update on that. Now, I've got your little, just to give you a heads up, I've got your little cushion here in the studio. Yep.
DVA.
I keep it. And you know what I use it for? I use this thing right here to put my drink on top so I don't make,
they're great. See another use.
So that
purpose.
Yeah, so it doesn't make a whole lot of noise on this big, nice wooden oak table that I have here. So it's nice and soft, so I can put my drink down without making any noise. So outside of that, what have you been doing lately with your wooden shoes and the plastic foam rubber thing that you had that you created as well?
Well, we're trying to educate a lot of people, and a lot of interest now. It's been 45 years getting there, but anyway, the biomechanics of the shoe have been proven to be very beneficial, and a lot of people are copying them around the world in different ways and duplicating the biomechanics in lower profiles. And that's what Tyler Raymer from the Logan, he's the Logan farrier on staff there right now, and he's had the Blackman computer system, and I challenged him to use a clog and look at the biomechanics a couple of years or 3 or 4 years ago, and he did, and he found out what a difference it made in the horses. So he and I encouraged him last year to use some of the clogs 2.0 on the jumping horses out at Logan International, and lo and behold, he really found that it made a huge difference. And so we went about trying to, or he did particularly, we come in around and worked on a shoe we call it the Steward Matrix. It's a new shoe.
Do you have that in front of you there?
They got one right here.
Oh, look at that. Now
That basically got all the mechanics of the clog, but it's not as shock absorbing as the Steward Clog 2.0. That it's basically, you got the base of this EVA material, and the EVA has the ability to plastically deform to the exact needs of the case. And the the problem with it is a little higher profile here. It's a little bit taller than a lot of people would like. And it does add moment arm forces to the collateral ligaments, but it actually decreases the moment arm forces to the deep digital flexor tendon and some of the omnidirectional breakover biomechanics, lessen the forces to some areas. But in the foot, there's a yin for every yang, and in the biomechanics of the foot are such that when you do something, you affect something else. So when you do biomechanics to a foot, you got to be careful in that you don't mess something else up. And for example, the taller the shoe, typically the slower the horse needs to go. So if you make a shoe 4 inches tall or 5 inches tall, he can walk, but he better not trot or run.
That's kind of like my 4-inch platforms that I walk around on. And women that wear those 6-inch heels, oh, God bless them for,
they're tough to walk in.
Yes. Thank you, Mike, for confessing to that. So,
yeah.
Dr. Steward, show me that first shoe, hold that up nice and clear for the camera. That looks like it's made out of what they make roller skating wheels out of. Is that what the material is?
Actually, this is a keratin material that's biodegradable. A guy by the name of Matt Lawler out of Colorado come up with this formula, and he's pretty tight-lipped about what it is, but it's very durable, like urethane, and you can nail this shoe on or you can glue it on. And we actually usually drill these holes out and put more holes in it for more grip, if you will. And we're really concerned that some of the urethane shoes really do a number of slipping around on the grass and things like that.
Can be very slick on grass.
Yep. And so we're trying to work on the grip here, and you can even drill little self-tapping sheet metal screws in this thing to get more grip. Like I saw some guys down in Texas doing the Freedom shoe, and the Freedom shoe is a clog, if you will, made out of aluminum, but it is a higher profile, and it doesn't have the frog. In the frog area and stuff, there's a reason nature designed the foot to look like it does, and the frog is built this way so that it actually can expand and contract back and forth without any problems. The biomechanics in the equine foot are unmatched in engineering in anything in the world, as far as I'm concerned, because you can do things with that foot, for example, hitting the ground at 75 miles an hour, and the pressure inside the foot actually is zero, or even they've measured it in negative numbers. A guy come to me at the AFA convention in Little Rock, Arkansas a couple of years ago and said, I heard that you'd figure my problem out. He's in England doing a paper on pressures in the foot, and he says, we've measured them and the pressures actually go into the negative number. And I said, well, give me a little time and I'll figure it out and come back in 30 minutes. So he did. And 30 minutes later, I said, well, a foot's like, using a plunger on a toilet stool. You go down with 15,000 pounds of pressure, and that pressure, the water goes out the drain or whatever. And in the case of the foot, it goes out through the hemodynamic system.
Right.
But when the plunger comes back, it gets into a negative number. So there's your answer.
Now, Dr. Steward, a few weeks ago, Mike and I were talking about just the normal steel shoes, going back to the artificial one that you have there. And you said there was a fairing strip. Yeah, is that ferrule? Is that what I'm calling it, Mike? That strip that goes around on the inside where they ferrule that?
The fuller.
The fuller. I'm sorry.
You can call it a fairing strip or whatever, but the fuller.
Now, and Mike says
fuller means it makes the shoe fuller.
Right.
It makes the shoe bigger.
But it also keeps you from sliding, and that's what you were worried about on the artificial one that you have made there. Have you tried doing that to make sure, or try to lessen the slip on the grass, or is that out of reach for that shoe?
Well, anytime you get into composites, you got to worry about the strength of the shoe itself.
So that wouldn't be a good idea.
No, when you put that around there, you make the shoe very, very vulnerable to stress fractures. Mm-hmm. A lot of the composite shoes that are on the market now, and Mike will tell you, a lot of people talk about the flexion. This shoe really flexes good. Well, guess what, guys? The flexion sometimes is detrimental. In other words, a lot of people come through this area at one time riding treeless saddles. And, I had people that horses were really sore back, and all I did was get them out of their treeless saddle into a treed saddle. And I said, you can ride your treeless during that barrel race for 17 seconds, but I want you to ride and train your horse in a treed saddle. And for example, I said, if you go backpacking, try backpacking without that rigid structure of the backpack. And the reason for the rigidity of the shoe or whatever is to disperse forces around the foot entirely, not just let it concentrate the force in one area. And whenever you have a shoe and let's say a foot is failing in some area, it's overloading, it's bending too much, and you allow that force to continue to push up on it, then you've got a problem. You're not doing what you need to do.
Mike, you were going to say something?
Right. That's sort of, with some of the flexible products, there has been a number of times I've been approached about someone who has an extremely unstable foot that wants to put something more flexible on it to take care of the problem, because we need it moving. And sometimes you need to slow down some of the movement.
Now, are you saying that they wanted the flexible just because they saw it on a commercial and they're this is new, this must be the best thing?
Well, the problem with any product, and Doc can tell you if I'm wrong or not, there is a proper place. Nothing works the same on every horse. Nothing. There are so many things put out there. This is the cure of all things, and there's no reality to it.
Well, that's right.
And
what I was alluding to a while ago was exactly what you're saying. Some feet are moving too much, and as a biomedical person, we call them farriers or horseshoers or whatever, but you're really just a sculpturing biomechanic is what you really are.
I call him the guy under the horse.
Yeah,
that's not what you usually call me.
You've got to match what the horse needs with what you've got. And if you don't properly match those things, then you're not doing your job.
No. And on the other end, there are horses that definitely need the foot to move more and need some protection, and that might be the appropriate deal for that horse. So everything's an individual.
All right, we're going to take a quick little break, and when we come back, we're going to get into Dr. Micheal Steward, and he wants to talk about actual biomechanics of the proper and how to properly trim a hoof. So stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. I'll be right back. Did you have coffee this morning?
Not enough.
I see that. Mike, I told you, I've always got a pot on. My dad makes a whole pot for the whole house.
Right.
And Amy will have a cup before she leaves. And then I will have maybe one and a half of one of these.
Right.
And then my dad.
But you've got
what?
The cup holder.
I got the EVA. Is that what it's?
EVA cup holder.
EVA cup holder. See, listen, you don't even hear.
They're going to start having those in fancy restaurants.
You don't even hear me set the cup down.
Yeah.
See, it's nice and dull.
When you get mad and slam your cup down, it'll lessen the high frequencies of impact and your cup won't break.
There you go.
There you go. If this horse thing doesn't work out for you, Doc, you can always make coasters for
there you go.
Aggressive bars,
There you go. Another one, bartender.
God damn it, shit. Come on, I've been here for 30 seconds. Where's my drink?
Make the whole bar out of EVA.
Exactly. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. Don't forget, if you have a question for Mike Stine, go over to equine.1. I'm sorry, equine.com. equinedynamics.com and ask them a question. Fill out that little form. And this is brought to you by Equine One, natural hoof mender putty, and also used in tandem with the natural hoof dressing, a 1-2 punch to help your horse's hoofs be all natural, 100% all natural, no petroleum products involved in this product. Go to equine.one with their natural formula. Order yours right now, 10% off. Go to equine.one with the keyword podcast and get 10% off your whole entire order. Thank you, Mike. And over to my far end side is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing good. And how are you, Doc?
I'm good.
And joining
by the way, the hoof doctor is called hoof doctor in other countries other than the U.S. The U.S. FDA won't let them call it hoof doctor like they do in Canada and other places.
And joining us here in the studio is Dr. Micheal Steward, and we'll let him. He is an official doctor, so we're allowed to call him doctor. So
there you go.
Among other things.
But we'll save that for in between the shows.
Right
now, Dr. Steward, you're going to talk about the biomechanics on to properly trim a horse's hoof. Now, when we say the biomechanics of a horse, I know, Mike, we've been talking about it. This is the whole essence of the show, getting a horse's sounder from the ground up and starting at the ground up. Now, when you talk about biomechanics, I'm thinking from the shoulders and the withers down. So explain how these two worlds kind of collide and join together to help you trim a horse's foot.
Well, the hoof is, under the influence of what's coming up from the ground and what's coming down from the horse. So the ground force, reaction force, and the weight force of the horse meet at the foot on the tune of 75 miles an hour with thousands of pounds per square inch of pressure. And when things aren't properly lined up and stuff, you get undue pressure on one side of the foot or one side of the cannon bone or something, and lots of times you break things and tear things up and bow tendons and things because the biomechanics aren't proper. And if the horse is malaligned at birth or whatever, crooked if you will, that shows up later on in life in the foot. And as the farrier doesn't address the foot properly and put a proper orthotic on it, it puts pressure up and down that leg in different places, from the shoulders all the way to the bottom of the foot. Those pressures aren't equalized out, and you can overload one side of the fetlock, for example, and break part of it off, like Rachel Alexander, a very famous racehorse, did in her yearling year. They put screws back in her, and she went on to become a champion. But that's real uncommon for that kind of a serious injury to return to soundness. But she did so probably with the help of a farrier that lined everything up and got everything in line.
Did it with a whole crew of very talented people, not just a farrier, because we can't do it without everybody else involved.
Well, that's very true. But, I used to train a lot of race horses, particularly rehab horses. And most of my rehab program involved feet.
Right.
I would take bad-footed horses and that were having knee chips and ankle problems and things like that, and I'd swim them and pony them a lot. I took the weight off their backs, but I specifically worked on the biomechanics of the foot. And I was very successful in rehabbing a lot of these horses and improving their soundness. And, I was on the internet a couple of days ago and talking about a horse's feet and how the horse was, the girl was worried about horse being a bleeder, made a bad run. And I was there just observing, and the vet was scoping the horse. And I went and started talking to the little girl from Arkansas, and I felt the horse's back, and he's sore in his back. And I looked at his feet, and he obviously had a abnormal HPA alignment, or the hoof pastern alignment was off. In other words, the horse was down on the heels of his feet.
Right.
And I talked to her quite extensively about the biomechanics of the foot and how if she'd improve them feet, that bleeding or the lung problem would probably go away on its own.
Yeah. Tony Gonzalez had a theory about horses that were chronic colicers and the whole alignment in the back end. I don't know how you would ever prove that. And there again, the whole thing with the knees, if you got a horse with a misalignment in the lower joint and that knee hits and it hyperextends itself, That could create a situation where you might end up with a slab fracture.
Sure.
You know, we've been doing hundreds and hundreds of shows here on Equine Dynamics, and it always amazes me. You know, when we talk about a horse's foot, I'm thinking in my mind, because I'm the simpleton. My wife rides horses. You know, I just ask the dumb questions. We're always talking about just one foot at any given time. We're just talking about 1 foot, and then you're like, okay, we figure out what's wrong with that foot, the biomechanics of that foot, and how we trim this 1 foot. And then in the back of my mind, I'm like, whew, that's done. But then I snap back into reality, and it goes. My brain goes, well, now you got 3 more feet to do to make that one match all the other one, not necessarily match, but now you got to take the compensation and stuff that you've done on this 1 foot and make that repeat so the other foot will work in tandem with that one. And now you figure out the both front feet. Well, now you got to deal with the back feet that are totally. I'm amazed that you guys can do this and to keep all this, you know, aligned in your head while you're doing it.
Let me throw a little one at you talking about that sort of deal. And Micheal Steward knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I had a lady who called me because her horse hit uneven on the front feet. Barefoot horse, wanted to keep it barefoot. No problem. Good solid feet for the conditions, and what it was doing is probably fine, right?
Right.
So she had me watch it. She wanted me to trim that foot that was hitting hard to fix that foot. Problem was, horse had a good good lateral rotation on the diagonal hind leg. I picked up the hind foot and did some adjusting, quick adjustment with the rasp, walked it out. And she said, you worked on the wrong foot. It's take your horse down the barn hall. And the unevenness in the front end evened out. And she was mad with me because I didn't work on the foot that was hitting the ground too hard. It was cause and effect. I worked on the cause. The foot hitting the ground was the effect.
There you go. Exactly.
But it wasn't what I was told to do, right?
Yeah, but you did what was right.
The horse was happy.
Well, what you should have done, Mike, is just, you want me to work on the front foot and just get your little rasp and, you know, just kind of tap, make noise, you know, bang a hammer on the just kind of, all right, I worked on that one. But let me look at this one just in case the actual problem. But let me work on this a little bit and, you know, do all that stuff. All right, there you go. Boom. You know,
I kind of wanted
fixed.
Some people to look and think about the situation a little bit. It's kind of why I approached it that way.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, let's pay attention to what's really going on here.
The real truth was he wanted her to know what a genius he was.
Exactly.
It didn't work.
She knew him well too much already. All right, guys, stick around. We're going to take a short little break and come back, and we're going to talk about applying the orthotic of a biomechanics to compensate for all these different angles and stuff that horses have to deal with. So stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back. Sound good? Okay.
Rare to go.
Yep.
Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, brought to you by Equine One, natural hoof dressing.
Behind it.
Yeah, natural hoof dressing and natural hoof mender. With these two is a 1-2 punch for your hoof care needs for all your horses. You can use it in any kind of weather, dry, wet, snowy, rainy, or muddy. You can use these in any condition. Get yours right now. Go to equine.one and get 10% off your total order with the keyword podcast. And over to my far hand side is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing good, Travis. How are you? And how are you, Doc?
I'm good. Thank you.
Now, Doc, have you used the natural hoof mender? Now, you said they're called hoof doctor in other countries because our rules here in the United States won't let them place the word doctor on it. So they call themselves Equine One. Have you ever used these products before? Are you familiar with the Equine One hoof doctor products?
I get them by the case.
Do you really?
Yes. I've used several cases of them, and I hand them out to my clients, and so far they love it.
Right. And Doc Steward's the one that got me started on it.
Oh, really?
Yes, he is.
Good deal. Well, our fans seem to enjoy it. We're getting a little bit of feedback from them. Mike gets a little feedback. I say a little bit. Mike gets most of the feedback. I don't get any feedback.
Right.
Nobody tells me anything.
Let me inject something here.
Sure, go right ahead.
These people are very astute, or whatever the word. I grew up on a John Deere tractor, and I didn't learn big words, but they are very gung-ho on education of the client, education of the veterinarian, education of the farrier. That's the biggest thing I love about this company, is their concern about trying to educate the people, not just to use their hoof products, but to get the people to doing the very best they can so they can have the soundest horses they can. And these products, by the way, are all natural. and they've got antioxidant and some things like that. The fish oil is always a good thing to put on feet. And I mean, they're really a good product, and my clients love it.
I know when we set up the whole meeting and everything with the Hoof Doctor Equine One people, you could get that general feel for them when you're talking to them and say, and this is, right now, this was not planned or anything. This is us talking about the product in real time. And you just get that natural feel when you talk to the people that are behind the product itself, that they're actually, hey, we're trying to help people out, that we feel this is a good product. We want to share it with the world, and then, make it a marketable price to where everyone can afford it. And you can afford it even more with the 10% off with our podcast.
Right.
One of the best seminars I've ever been to was put on by Equine One, and particularly Steve McConnell. He did a great job of organizing it.
Right.
Had the great food there, and of course he had some of the best speakers in the world, Eric.
Food, speaker, and then presentation. And you were one of the presentators.
But it was a great educational experience. The people really loved it.
Right.
Now, an educational experience we want to do right now is using the biomechanics to apply the orthotics to compensating a horse's foot. So, Dr. Stewart, can you dive a little bit more into that topic for us?
Well, a lot of farriers through the years, have done their artistry, just like Michelangelo or whoever, being an artist. But we, as an industry, need to be able to convey our education, our messages to other farriers, other veterinarians and things. And there's been a real disconnect with the veterinary education with the horse's foot. We kind of abandoned it for several years, or 100, 200 years of, the veterinary profession started out as a farrier and was the farrier. And then we kind of gave it away to somebody else and kind of lost touch with it. And, here we are 100 or 200 years later trying to get and understand the horse's foot, because, so many times I see horses come in, and the horse that I was talking about a while ago from Arkansas, she'd spent $10,000 with vet bills. And I promise you, if she'd spent, not necessarily any money, just done her feet right, those vet bills would have been cut by 75%.
Right. Yeah. The farrier can definitely make a difference in vet bills, for sure, and injuries and longevity of a horse.
That's exactly my point, and that's why, if you will, some veterinarians don't really like me coming around, because I cost them money in the long run. But I figure, with me, I used to think that if I could make their clients happier, or my clients happier, make their horses last longer, they may have enough money to pay my vet bill.
That's like, when I was working for, do you know Dick Mansman?
Oh,
Richard
yeah.
Mansman. When I was working up at his place, he was all about, like yourself, taking care of the feet. We had x-rays on everything, got things lined up. And, these were horse people were taking for injections. And
It's a lot of injections.
right. Well, some of them do right. Every 6 months, you're supposed to inject joints. But you got a mechanical issue, and the injection puts a Band-Aid over the mechanical issue. Yes, you can get the horse feeling better. But his thing was, let's take care of the mechanical issues. Wasn't dead set against injections. He wasn't going to do them. But you don't want to, you want to minimize it and take care of the mechanics, because if you're just putting a Band-Aid over it, eventually you're going to break the horse anyway.
What are the injections that they're putting? Is it a steroid injection?
Well, oftentimes a steroid is used, and the joint itself, what you're injecting in there is grease. You're trying to grease that joint up and get the joint back to making its own grease. Hyaluronic acid, particularly, is the grease that we use, and the synovial cells of the joint itself produce that hyaluronic acid normally, and the normal. They keep an amount of grease around there that does the job. But, like racehorses, when you work the horse, when you run the horse, it creates a lot of friction in that joint. And over time, that friction will make the synovial sites to where they won't produce the right amount and the right type of hyaluronic acid. And the joint actually starts producing water to lubricate itself. And then the joint actually breaks down, and you chip a knee or something, because that cushion, that grease, also cushions and keeps the chondrocytes, or the cartilage in that joint healthy. And when you start getting into that problem, and it's called degenerative joint disease, then you can't inject them enough. Every 3 weeks is not uncommon on a racehorse to inject that joint. And that's what you got to do to keep that thing greased up. And corticosteroids actually stop the degradation of the joint. There's a fire, if you will. I used to say, well, I'd like to put cortisone in this joint. People, oh my God, you're messing up. Well, cortisone puts the fire out and changes the environment of that joint to where it's not deteriorating. The body has a way of sometimes, we get in new terms that I like to talk about is bioclastic. That means the life clastic, and borrowing from osteoclastic. When osteoclastic activity, you have osteoclasts that go into the bone and eat the bone up and take it apart.
Wow.
And you want to create an osteoblastic situation whereby the bone is actually reformed, or blastic is actually from the blastocytes in the embryo where they're actually forming cells. So you want to change the environment from a bioclastic environment in that joint, in other words, joint degeneration, into a bioblastic. In other words, the joint's repairing itself. And you do that, number one, by putting out the fire, injecting cortisone. And cortisone is a very effective thing to get that joint back settled down. For example, if you inject a joint with hyaluronic acid, that acid in a hot joint lasts about 7 or 8 or 10 minutes, and it's gone. So you didn't do a lot of good, but it did help. But if you'll put cortisone in there the day or two before and inject that acid a couple of days later, it actually works and stays and does its thing a lot better. But historically, we don't like sticking 2 needles in a joint, because every time you stick a needle in a joint, you can actually wind up destroying that horse's career.
I got 2 questions for you. Speaking of injection and stuff. Now, my whole entire life, I always played baseball and basketball and been in sports and stuff. And then I went through high school and did a little bit of collegiate sports playing and stuff. And I just know that when they start talking about injecting steroids into a joint or knee or something like that, you always hear in the background people worried about scarring because of the injection and because of it going in. That's one question. Are you worried about scarring when you're injecting a horse like this? And also, too, when you talk about steroids, and last week or the week before we were talking about the sugar levels and the glucose levels in a horse, does that raise a potential for those levels to go higher in a horse, that we need to look out for that as well?
You can actually founder a horse injecting joints with too much cortisone.
Right.
Especially a horse that's right on the borderline. And usually you won't founder one. I think the number was like 6 milligrams of Vetalog or triamcinolone was the theoretical number you didn't want to cross, or some number like that. But it wasn't very much. But it's on those horses that are on the borderline of having a problem there anyway. But nevertheless, they could be a perfectly normal, secretariat horse, and you stuck a needle in it and actually foundered the horse because of the overdose.
Go ahead, Mike.
It's like last week we were talking about the use of cortisone and a few other things on horses with breathing problems.
Yes. So I guess
similar situation,
right.
Overload the system, right?
And what about
over the edge?
And what about scarring? I always hear about that one kicker on the football team. If you put too much, if you keep shooting steroids in his knee, it's going to scar up, and he's not going to be able to move it or kick, or something's going to break and dissolve on him.
Well, that's a big long discussion there, but basically the needle hole will cause a small scar. But what you're really alluding to probably is the fact that you've got a problem there. And if you just cover it up and say, you're with cortisone, you're telling the body you don't have a problem. You can go ahead and kick that ball. You can go ahead and hit your head against the wall.
I need to drink cortisone every morning.
That's right.
You don't have a problem. You don't have a problem, body.
We'll build you a concrete wall to pound your head on.
Over time, what the body does, arthritis is the body just welding that joint shut or closed or is immovable. and you get up, plantar fasciitis is the body healing that tendon overnight. And you get up in the morning and you tear that tendon back apart, and it hurts like the dickens.
It
but
sure
the
does.
body's all the time trying to do something. For example, with arthritis, weld those joints, and then you're in there tearing that apart. And over time, if you do enough abuse, what the body does is forms scar tissue or puts down calcium, and that's what you're talking about mostly, is the deposition of calcium around the deep digital flexor tendon, the suspensory tendons of the navicular bone, and things like that. But that's when the body's in an osteoclastic situation, and it's having to weld those bad parts up as best it can. And it does it with calcium and scar tissue, collagen, and things like that. So, if you don't fix that, for example, the terms I like to use, and if you read my writings, I try to use the biohydraulics of the foot, the hemodynamic and the lymphatic systems driven, and get your biomechanics right, so that you can convert that foot from an bioclastic foot into a bioblastic foot, whereby he can heal those things. And you can, actually, we've proven clinically and with lots of cases that you can actually heal navicular up. You can take a really bad navicular, and that's what I challenge guys like Mike to do. Take the worst navicular that you're going to put to sleep and put a set of Steward Clog 2.0 on him and watch the magic.
You hear that, Mike? That's your challenge.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right. We're going to take a quick little break and come back, and we'll talk about the different times of using biomechanics to help rehabilitate a hoof. So stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back. Go. This is going to be... Mike has a peanut bladder.
Yeah.
He drinks his coffee, and then... Usually this segment he has to go down.
I didn't take my Lasix this morning, or I'd already had to go 4 times.
So he's going to step out just one sec. Well, at the beginning, he was like, he'd forget about it. And then I forget about it. And then he had to remind me. You ready?
Right.
Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. If you have a question for Mike Stine, actually follow him over on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search Equine Dynamics, Mike Stine, and you can see for every podcast we do, we have a matching video as well. And you can see Mike Stine holding up Equine 1 hoof mender and also natural hoof dressing. This 1-2 combo is an awesome element, a tool for your toolbox to have in your truck, or if you have horses, using these in any conditions, dry, wet, muddy, rainy, snow, or sleet. Check out equine.one and get 10% off your total purchase with the keyword podcast. That's equine.one for all your hoof care needs. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
And over to my far hand side, my own hoof care need is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing good. Travis, how are you?
Doing all right. Your hair looks beautiful, by the way.
I thought so. My stylist.
You are very stylish.
You want their number?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do. I need a bookmark or something. And joining us here in the studio is Dr. Micheal Steward. How are you?
Good. I'm real good, because, Mike was concerned the last time I told him. I said, I hated being the ugliest guy on the podcast. So, I think he's trying to help me out this time.
Do the best you can. Do the best you can. I don't want you to feel bad.
He's trying to balance the tables here, with my good, charming looks and everything. So,
next to you, Travis, come on. We don't stand a chance.
I'm an Adonis compared to you two guys. All right, guys. We're going to talk about, Dr. Micheal Steward is going to talk about using biomechanics at different times in rehabilitating a horse's foot. Now, you started a little bit in the beginning of the show talking about it, but I want you to dive a little bit more deeper into it and how you use it when you're rehabilitating a horse's hoof.
Well, just like Mike Stine was talking earlier, you need to, as a farrier, as a veterinarian, you need to look at the foot and look at the limb and see what biomechanics are missing, what's out of line or whatever, and you need to figure out what you need to do and what you can add to the trim or whatever to try to get this foot to function in a normal way. A foot that does not look normal cannot function normal. Yeah. And particularly, they start getting distorted, they start getting flares. And in our laminitic cases, so many times in the past, the foot will be way out there and the people will shoe it or trim it or whatever, and they'll leave that dorsal wall sticking way out there. And that's absolutely detrimental to a laminitic case to heal, because it forms what we call a laminar wedge, and that's scar tissue underneath that wall pushing the bone down as it grows. It's actually topic white line that's formed from the remnants of the torn secondary epithelial lamina as they detach from the dermal lamina, and those little pieces are mitotically stimulated to grow, and they form a scar tissue that forms a wedge that pushes the wall upward and the bone downward. And as the terminal papilla of the white line at the base get tore away, and they start they were like this, and now they're like this, and the bone's here, and they just push it down, and you see the end of that coffin bone deteriorate, right, Mike?
Yes, you do.
It can go away, right?
Oh, yes, it does go away. And when you get into that, bone loss, it's tough keeping those guys happy after a while.
Yeah. Bone loss is not very reversible in my opinion, at all. And maybe we can if with some stem cell therapy or something like that, but we haven't really got a good feel of that right now. But, historically in the past, we have trouble teaching veterinarians and teaching some farriers the biomechanics of what needs to be done, and particularly the trim. Mike, can you talk about the trim a little bit, how important it is?
Oh, it's extremely important, and getting that whole alignment of the bone column back to where it should be, and then what you apply to the foot can take care of the mechanical situation, reduce leverage, get pressure off the flexor tendon and all that. But you got to realign the bone column and get.
You don't have to.
Huh?
You don't have to.
No, you don't have to do anything.
But I want you to.
Yeah, right.
But you need to.
You need to.
Yeah.
You really got to take care of the back of the foot, because that's one thing that tends to get overlooked.
Like I said, we've been
And
doing.
that's with any shoeing.
Like I said, we've been doing this show for a long time, and we've talked about nothing but the problems of a horse's foot and the horse's legs and the biomechanics, and this is happening, that at the end of this whole entire, wherever this podcast takes us, at the end of the whole entire thing, I don't want a horse. I mean, why would
if you hadn't gotten married to a horsewoman,
I wouldn't have one.
That's right.
But still, I mean, why would anyone still go through and put this? I say this animal, and I'm not a bleeding, whatever you want to call me. No, it's so amazing. I would find something cheaper, something a little bit like dogs. Let's train dogs.
You know why God put horses on this earth?
Why is that?
To control the crow population.
The crow population.
Yeah, because they're always making you eat crow, right, Mike?
there you go. There you go.
Jesus.
I like that.
It's just so amazing that, with a horse that's so majestic and does so much stuff, that it has all these problems, and we continue to, make sure and try to get even broken horses. Mike, you've seen it a million times, where we've had case studies where someone has bought this horse and now is trying to make it a dressage horse that hasn't done anything in the last 3 years, and you're like, whoa, we got to put new tires on this horse. We got to start over. No, I want my horse.
There's a reason he wasn't doing anything the last 3 years.
Exactly, and some people just don't understand that, and we're hoping with this with this show and this whole podcast and everything that we're doing here, that we're educating people to do one thing: make smarter choices when at least choosing or dealing with the horse that they have now, and what's to be expected, time frames and stuff like that. Mike, again, another situation, he had a horse, someone had a horse, and Mike put a patch or something on it, and okay, the horse can't do anything for 3 or 4 months or something like that, and you found out like 2 months later they're doing natural work again. You're like, you don't understand, this is what's going on.
Right. Sometimes you need to give them some time to heal up.
Yeah, exactly. So, when you talk about rehabilitating a horse's hoof, Dr. Steward, you don't want to hear that. When you're an owner and you're a trainer and you have a time schedule because you've got this event and all that's coming up, go into how important it is to make sure that using the biomechanics and on rehabilitating a horse's hoof, and the time, not necessarily doing the job, but making sure it's got enough time, just like Mike said, enough time to heal.
Well,
yes.
Let me tell you something that I see In the past, we've stood horses around in this box stall and let them heal up and stuff like that, and our results were horrible.
Right.
And in fact, my contention, even with laminitic horses, except for the really critical ones, movement is so required to heal a foot. You have to have movement. And I say atraumatic movement. You want to move the horse in a way that it doesn't tear stuff up. And if you can do that, he'll heal up 10 times, 1,000 times faster than just standing still doing nothing.
Being stagnant.
So, yep. Now back to our original question, if you will. Let's talk about the biomechanics of the leg itself and why that affects the foot. A lot of colts are born and the knee joint, let me see if I can get this, is angled. This is a left knee and it's turning out. And a lot of farriers, we come in and we trim the foot trying to offset that. And over time, Mother Nature tends to heal those. But if you let that horse run around the pasture 500 miles a day, he's going to just tear it up even worse. But if you put him in a limited exercise, Mother Nature has a tendency to heal that carpal joint back like this if it's not too extreme. Now, they can be pretty bad if you'll keep them in a small stall or whatever, and that actually does heal up. But bear in mind, you got a lever there that if they're running too much, it's just pulling this away. Now, as you trim the foot, you can trim the foot so that it puts pressure, and it'll actually turn that joint a little bit, but it also will turn the ankle joint. If you've got a perfectly level ankle joint that's on a bone like this, the bone should be like this. That wouldn't be level, but because it's like this, it's level. And you crank that, and a lot of these farriers, veterinarians, will over trim a foot, and they don't know when to stop. And that joint, the carpal joint, will straighten up a large degree. But what happens is that the ankle joint or the fetlock joint winds up with the horse started with a valgus deviation of the whole limb and wound up with a pretty straight deviation, not too bad, let's say, and it comes down to the ankle, and then the ankle turns like this. It actually is a varus formation.
Well, with your young horses, the timing of the joint closing makes a big difference in when you start working on the alignment of a particular joint. And so many times with young horses, people, I want to wait till he's 5.
Yep. Well, it's too late.
Well, Mike has a thing on his Facebook page over at Mike Stine's Equine Dynamics Mike Stine, where you've got a graph and it's like color coded. From here to here, these joints are closed up by year 1. These joints are closed up by year 2.
3 months, 6 months, 9 months. Yep.
And that's over on his Facebook page. So I've seen that graph as far as the evolution of a horse, as far as what joints are closing up at what time period.
Yep. I was at a Ruidosa sale last year, and I was noticing that a lot of those yearlings coming in for sale had a valgus knee formation, carpus, if you will, but they'd pretty well been straightened up by the farrier. But so many of these horses had a vargus for ankle joint on the left only. And I got to thinking, why does that happen? Well, I'm thinking because these horses coming in, and the farrier was putting them in the farrier program, and a lot of them hadn't been trimmed up much before. But anyway, because they were put on walkers that went to the left all the time, that they actually, the circling in the round pin and stuff, called a vargus formation of the left only foot. Right, Mike?
Yeah, I think you're correct on that, for sure. Working only in one direction definitely twists things.
I started watching the different trainers, or specifically the fitters, the people who take those horses as young yearlings and get them ready for the sale. And a couple of the fitters, and particularly Dr. Steve Burns, he has a ranch in California. And I said, Doc, your horses, none of them do this. They're all perfectly aligned. He said, well, you can blame it on that 89-year-old farrier I got working for me, And the moral of the story was the farrier knew what he was doing and
right.
how to compensate. And maybe he told them, put them on the walker and go both ways. Don't just go one way,
Right.
But anyway, it's all about trying to correct those biomechanics. And once you can't trim the foot to correct those biomechanics, and then you can do a lot with the trim, right, Mike?
Yes, you can.
And it's a lot more than you think. And sometimes the biomechanics of the trim and stuff are just one or two extra rasp strokes. They don't have to be huge, monstrous thing. And if you're, let's say you got an apprentice farrier watching you work, if you don't point out what you're doing, he'll never see it.
No.
Because it's very subtle. And I learned something working with Dr. Mark Caldwell and Tyler Raymer up here, and Tyler's got a workman, blackman, hoof beat, whatever you call it. But they both discovered that, when things are out of balance, like if you got a teeter-totter and it's this much out of balance, well, it doesn't matter if you put 40 more pounds of weight over here because you're 100 pounds out of balance. That doesn't matter. But when you're right here close to being perfectly balanced, 1 ounce makes a huge difference. And that's what he saw on the workman Blackman, is that how much difference little tiny things make when you're really close to balance. And Mike, you can talk about that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Now, Mike, is that something like you were talking about tying a little sandbag, like a sock full of sand on a horse's leg? Is that when you're adding a little bit of weight to it?
Add a little weight, shifting a little weight, yes. The sandbag's the deal.
Drilling a hole and putting the fishing or lead in the
yeah,
slapping a fishing weight in the back of a aluminum shoe at a certain point. Yeah, that was old Jack Miller thing. And because of all the stride of the horse and the way they're moving and getting the reach you want, you'd think about one of those little tiny squeeze-on fishing weights. Jack would have me drill at certain points on certain horses into the back of the shoe and put a couple little squeeze-on weights. All right, you talk about 1,000, 1,200 pound, 1,400 pound animals.
It would not make a difference to me.
You think?
Well, I don't know.
Big difference. It's kind of like that little tiny weight on that big heavy tire on your truck.
Yeah, I guess so.
And,
yeah.
But
over time,
right? If you got, depending on where you put the weight, you can create a little more extension. You can create a little straighter flight path. Once that hoof is in the air, the inertia it creates in that certain direction. You can create, if you put it in the correct spot in the shoe, you can create more knee flexion because of where you put a little bit of weight, and it takes just a minuscule amount.
Yep. The closer you get to balance, the
Right.
less you have to do.
It's done with that. It's done with, all right, in the forge, if you forge in a little extra metal in an area on a shoe, on a steel shoe, and that happens. I had one here recently where the horse tracked very narrow in the back end, and I ended up drilling, tapping the shoe and running a bolt in it, and then forging the bolt into the shoe because I was working in a propane forge and I didn't want to pull the welder out. And I just hammered it in, shaped it up, put it on, and all of a sudden that little small bolt in there was enough to create the width where we weren't interfering.
All right, guys, a quick little break, and we'll come back and what did we learn today and wrap up the show. So stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back.
We need another show.
Well, we do. We do.
It's so much information, but, little bite-sized pieces is what we try to do with the
We're good at Doc's good at running rabbit trails.
Yeah. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, the #1 podcast to create sounder horses from the ground up. Brought to you by Equine One, natural hoof dressing, and also the natural hoof mender putty. Use these in combination on any of your horses in any conditions. Farrier recommended. Go to equine.one for your order and get 10% off right now with the keyword podcast. You can do that anytime as well. Get yours over there at equine.one and 10% off your order with the keyword podcast. And over to my far hand side is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing good, Travis. And we got Doc Steward on with us.
And joining us here in the studio is Dr. Micheal Steward. How are you? Thank you again for joining us.
Well, I'm a lot better looking now that I've been associated with you guys for a while.
I
Exactly.
did make you look better, don't I?
Every segment you get gooder looking and better
appreciate
looking.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So what did we learn today? We were talking about using biomechanics properly on the hoof, on trimming a hoof, applied the orthotic compensation, and also the different times of rehabilitating a foot. So, Dr. Micheal Steward, can you? Did we miss anything talking about those topics? Do you want to elaborate a little bit more?
Missed a lot. I mean, we could go on for years
Indefinitely.
talking about what we're talking about.
Sure.
One of the things that I'd like to say is, the use of the x-ray machine in the hands of the podiatrist is really informative and really shows the farrier and the veterinarian what's going on or what's not going on. For example, you can really appreciate the HPA situation, or the hoof pastern alignment. And hoof pastern alignment tells you a lot about the comfort of the horse. When you get the hoof pastern alignment realigned to a more normal angle, usually the horse will go better and feel better and be more sound.
Right.
And one of the things that I've used besides the x-ray machine now, and I use a lot, and I call it the smart clog. It's a piece of ethylene vinyl acetate shaped just like this. And when properly applied to the foot, you can't slide it this way or too far this way, but this will plastically deform over time. Or if you want to reuse it, you just use the elastic ability, and it has the ability to show you what the needs of that particular horse are at that moment in time. For example, this is a clog that's been wore with the impression material for a while, probably 6 or 8 or 12 weeks, and you see it's plastically deformed. This is not wear. A little bit of it is wear here, but this is plastic deformation where those little air bubbles have been collapsed, and the horse is maintaining a big giant wedge. He's wedging himself like 12 degrees or maybe 15. But this horse, and this is what I do for rehabilitation. If you want to rehabilitate a foot, just about any condition, laminitis or navicular or broken coffin bone, this system right here and with the cast around it is the very best. There's lots of reasons why, and particularly it's because you're actually re-engaging the frog. You're making the biohydraulic system of this foot work like it's supposed to work.
All right, give your information one more time for our listeners, just in case they missed it the last time. Give us all your information one more time. On Facebook, your phone number, and if you have an email address, that'd be awesome as well.
Facebook, Micheal, Micheal Steward. Had to be different. Sorry.
It's all right.
But anyway, my phone number, area code 405-620-2673. 2673.
Do you have an email address that people can send you pictures and stuff?
Email at dox, lowercase, D as in dog, O as in orange, X, X-ray, MLS, Micheal Lee Steward, my initials, at AOL.com,
Mike, you want to say anything else? You good?
No, don't put sunscreen in your eyeballs.
Okay, I will definitely not do that. We'd like to thank...
I flew all the way to North Carolina last week, and you'd think Mike would drive 50 miles to see me.
I didn't know you were up here till you went home.
Well,
You called me leaving the airport.
Well, I'd like to thank Dr. Micheal Steward for joining us again this week. And if you want all that information, make sure you go over to YouTube. You can see all that information over on the Mike Stine... over on the Equine Dynamics Mike Stine YouTube page, and I'll get all that information up there as well if you miss it. On behalf of Mike Stine over there,
Thank you. Have a good day with your ponies.
I'd like to thank Dr. Micheal Steward for joining us.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Been a pleasure as always.
My name is Travis, saying see you next week.
Hi, Lucky. Good night, Ned. Hi, Dusty.
Good night, Ned.
Good night, Ned.